the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Hey, I have a question here that came in via an email from Bill. And Bill's asking, during the communion rite at Mass, the congregation recites a short passage, Lord, I am not worthy, just before the priest consumes the bread and wine. What is the origin of that passage? Does it trace to the words of the Roman soldier who had a very powerful interaction with Christ?
In fact, it does. So this is also the same reason why we say, Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word and my soul shall be healed. The incident in the Gospels where the Roman centurion, who was a God-fearer, he was a pagan, but he was a God-fearer, and he asked that the Lord would heal his servant, but in his humility, he said, but Lord, I understand that you can just order my servant to be healed, and that's enough. You don't have to go to all the trouble of going actually to my house where the servant is. And he uses this analogy of his own work as a Roman centurion where he says, I know what it's like to tell a soldier, go, and he goes. Do this, and he does this. So he was, of course, speaking this about Jesus, knowing that the Lord could command this to be done, and it would be done. So that great sense of humility and faith that the centurion had, that's definitely part of this. And in addition to that would also be just the general recognition of our true unworthiness before God, how we're sinful and weak and fickle and all the things that beset us. So when the priest is standing at the altar, ministering in persona Christi, as we say in Latin, in the person of Christ, he is an alter Christus, in Latin again, another Christ, by way of doing what Jesus commanded to do at the Last Supper. He's acknowledging his own personal guilt of sin and repenting of all his sins, but he's also acknowledging in the name of the people, the guilt of the people, and how this is guilt that can only be forgiven and expiated by what Jesus did on the cross, which is what the priest is there at the altar to do, is to do what Jesus did at the Last Supper. And at the Last Supper, as you know, Jesus said, this is my body which will be given up for you. This is my blood that will be poured out for you and for many. And that happened in time as an historical event the following day at the cross. So the priest acknowledging his own unworthiness and that of the people is part of the priestly ministry of offering this once-for-all sacrifice of Jesus, which takes away the sins of the world. And getting back to that Roman centurion for a second, the healing of the servant is symbolic of the healing of the soul. Just like the lepers whom Jesus healed. And in the case of the 10 lepers, and only one came back to thank God, we talked about that at the beginning of the program this morning, or in Mark's Gospel, chapter 1, where a single leper asks for a cure and he receives it. Those are symbolic of the way in which God does an even greater and more important cure, which is to cure the disease of sin in the soul. So as bad as diseases of the body are, and they are bad, the worst disease between the two, bad and worse, the worst disease would be the disease of sin that eats away at the soul. Not literally, of course, the soul is indestructible. The soul is entirely simple, but you get my point. So there are like layers of meaning in between and on top of each other. So when the priest says this at Mass, and when we say the similar words at Mass, the Lord, I am not worthy, we're invoking all of those dimensions of it. That was a great email, short and sweet, but good point.